Part of the fun is having the chance to do a little morning exercise. This is all that I think we're up to at this point, and that is spinning the Rotary Virtual Wheel of Fortune to award some gift cards that always come in handy. So kind of a little preamble here. Now, remember, you must be present to win. So we will give you a moment to see if you're here.
Still delighted.
Okay. All right. Now, first, we're going to spin for a $10 card to Starbucks. So let's rock and roll on the magic wheel. There it goes.
I did it without video.
And survey says
Darren Franskowiak.
now let's give it another spin here. Next up, this is for a $25 Amazon gift card. Little startup company, big expectations. And Brant.
Whoa.
It's to stay after and sweep up the cyber confetti, I think. Well, congratulations, and know that we will spin more later. So be sure to stick around and place your bets. Now, I know that the word meeting and the word fun sometimes go together like cheese and Nutella. Because we have all had our share of experiences with online meetings. For example, you can see by this slide here that this is probably the kind of meeting that you will often see and get yourself stuck in. We know this one, right? We'll wait for the host. The group gets excited about backgrounds. Someone's got some audio issues. Eventually, and I was scared to put this slide up because I'm sure during the business meeting, we're going to also have spontaneous cat shots. I'm sure we will. It's just a matter of time. And you actually get some stuff in there. So the meetings are scary online. It's not the new normal. It's the new paranormal, I think. Well, anyway, this year, Rotary District 6540 is going back to the future. This is how far back we're going in this next slide. Take a look. You know these people. We are going back to the basics. It worked for a whole family. It can work for our extended family, I'm sure. These are back to the days when all that was needed for a smooth, successful, productive meeting were just the simple connections and a little assistance on the side. And that's why this morning, we are pleased to announce that Rotary Leadership has contracted with an international firm to provide a help desk that is free and available to use anytime during today's business meeting. Now, we have actual video of this global help desk at work. Take a look.
Ja, så bra, ok. Ja, hei du. Nå fatter jeg det. Hei du. Ja.
Ja, hva gjelder det?
Ja, det er denne her. Ja, vil du sitte? Takk. Ja.
Jaha.
Ja, så jeg har ikke fått gjort noen ting hele formiddag, ja.
Ok, nei, jeg beklager at det tar tid. Altså, skjønner vi holder på å legge om til et helt nytt system, og da skal alle ha hjelp på en gang. Vet du.
Ja,
Så du kommer ikke inn i den, eller?
Nei, den bare ligger der.
Ok, har du forsøkt å åpne den?
Ja, åpne den, altså hvis det hadde vært så enkelt, så hadde jeg jo ikke tilkalt helpdesk, hadde jeg vel?
Nei, det er
Nei.
sant. Nei.
Nei. Det skal være en vann?
Nei, da, det skal være fort gjort. Det
Ja.
skal vi se. Du bare gjør der. Sånn.
Ja.
Da er du i gang.
Ja, altså så langt kom jeg også.
Ok.
Ikke sant? Men så stoppet det opp, og så var jeg redd for at noe av teksten skulle forsvinne, så jeg turte ikke å gå videre.
Åja, ok. Nei, men du skjønner at inni her, så ligger det kanskje flere hundre sider med lagret tekst. Så for å komme videre, så tar du tak i et ark, sånn måten her.
That's all right.
Sånn. Blar du over på neste side, sånn. Da fortsetter teksten.
Jeg blar, altså.
Du blar, ja.
Men når jeg skal tilbake da?
Ja, da bare blar du tilbake igjen. Tar tak der, og så gjør du sånn. Der, så er du tilbake til den teksten du hadde i stad. Ikke noe
Ok, så den
forandret.
slutter der, og så fortsetter den der, ja. Ok, men når jeg skal avslutte for dagen, hva gjør jeg da?
Da bare slår du sammen permene
Ja?
på den måten der. Sånn. Da er den lukket, da ligger alt lagret inni der.
Altså, jeg risikerer ikke å miste noe av teksten her nå,
Nei,
altså.
alt ligger lagret inni her nå.
Ja.
Da må du i tilfelle sette fyr på hele greia. Det er kanskje lite sannsynlig. Så.
Ja, ok. Nei, men for det er noe med det at ikke sant, når du har holdt på med skriftruller,
Ja.
så tar det litt grann tid å konvertere til å bla i en bøk. Ja. Ja, det var TV.
Det er greit.
Ja, flott. Ja, men du, en TV før du går. Jeg må bare gå gjennom en gang til. Altså, jeg åpner
Ja.
sånn,
Ja, riktig.
og så, hva du kalte det?
Blar.
Jeg blar,
Ja, bla videre.
blar frem og tilbake.
Ja.
Og når,
Teksten ligger der hele tiden.
ja. Og når jeg er ferdig, så bare lukker jeg den.
Ja, riktig.
Flott.
Fint det.
Kjempefint.
Ja, flott det.
Ja, men du, vent, ikke sant? Nå er den sånn igjen, nå får jeg ikke åpnet den. Nå får jeg ikke åpnet den.
Ja, det er fra feil side. Du
Hva mener
må åpne fra andre siden.
Så det er ikke likegyldig, det,
Nei,
altså?
du må åpne fra den siden der. Sånn. Der. Der er den åpen.
Ja vel.
Har du
Ok.
lest manualen, eller?
Manualen?
Jeg skal følge med som manualen som brukerveiledning. Det er sikkert den der. Der, vet du.
Å ja,
Inni
den,
der
ja.
står alt sammen.
Ja, men ikke sant, der har du samme problemet. Får den ikke opp. Åpnet den, så.
Ok, det skulle vi kanskje ha tenkt på.
So they're here for you. They've hung out their shingle, and with quality help like that, I think we are all ready, and we are fully inspired, and we're fully caffeinated. In fact, I have my single serving container right here. I am ready for this. This should at least get me to the break, I think. And so with all that, let's wade into the waters of the business meeting. It is my pleasure to introduce past district governor and chair of the District Administrative Council, Dan Ryan. Dan, take it away.
Thank you, Bruce. For those of you who know me well, yeah, that could have been me being trained on the video. I'm not the most techie guy, but always like to start off with a little humor. Before we start, I might share some news with you. Kathy and I we have 12 grandchildren, and sadly we've lost 2 to muscular dystrophy. But while we cherish their memories, we celebrate life. And my oldest granddaughter, Jordan Ann, is getting married this afternoon. So we're pretty pumped up today. She spent the night here, and when she was first born, they stayed here. So I told her, I said, you've come full cycle. You were born here, and now you're sleeping here the night before your wedding. So, but it kind of made me think about the importance of family. And then, of course, it makes me think about the importance of our Rotary family, and how much fun we have when we're together, and how many of us know each other. And I sure miss those hugs, and hopefully soon we'll be able to give those hearty and warm handshakes. And everyone knows I'm a hugger, so look forward to the day when we're able to do that. We're here to be doing our annual business meeting. I am Dan Ryan of the DeMotte Kankakee Valley Rotary Club. And as the RI bylaws require, it says a conference of Rotarians of each district shall be held annually at such time and place as agreed upon by the governor and the presidents of a majority of the clubs of the district. The governor shall prepare and execute a written report of the conference proceedings within 30 days of adjournment of said conference, and then send that to RI. Every member in good standing of a club and a district present at the district conference or the district resolutions meeting shall be entitled to vote on all matters. And there is, according to bylaws, any club with membership of more than, each club shall have 1 elector. Any club with a membership of more than 25 shall be entitled to 1 additional elector for each additional 25 or a major fraction thereof. So I think we're set with that, although I've talked with our very competent district secretary and administrator, Chris Widener, and Chris has asked me to mention to you, number 1, as we all know, if you're not speaking, please mute. But there was a change of delegates. He was getting phone calls even last night. So-and-so can't make it. This will be the delegate. So first off, what he'd like for you to do is to rename yourselves and add your clubs if you can. For example, he gave the example, Chris Widener, Rensselaer Rotary or Rensselaer. And then also, if you would go to chat, he said, ask them to indicate in the chat as just as a backup if they are a voting delegate or not, because he'll have a record of that. as we go through this, the other thing he's asking is that please raise your hand, and I will recognize you. Or John, if you could maybe help me out with that, Governor John, for motions and for seconds, because he needs to be able to track that also. So when the time comes, we will be doing as when we do our approvals, those that have been designated as delegates will be included in the poll. We'll be able to vote when we take our vote. So I think I've touched on everything. If I haven't, Chris, as you'd say, unmute and let me know. Otherwise, we're going to proceed. Chris, did you need any more time in regard to attendance? Having heard nothing, I'm gonna assume you don't. So let's first enter into, everyone should have, according to the bylaws, this was sent out 21 days prior to this meeting. And so we would ask for approval of the agenda to start with. You think we would need a motion and a second first, Chris?
Motion to approve.
Ron John sets the motion from Cherville, second,
Second.
and that's from Lee Morris of LaPorte. If you would then, for you, if you're a delegate, please vote and submit. We're going to try to do these within 30 seconds once he puts them up, once we get rolling here. And Chris, you're going to have to indicate, there's our results. There you go. Yes, have approved 97%, 3% abstaining, so motion carries, and we shall move on. You have been provided the minutes of the May 15th, 2020 meeting. Chris is going to put those up. And you should have already have reviewed those. If not, they're on the screen, kind of maybe a little tough to read. But when you're so ready, someone would make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
So
Motion to approve the minutes, Josh Wanning, Summit City South.
I second that motion.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Looks like we had Josh and Jeff with Jeff Pete from Fort Wayne was the second. And if you would put up the, there we go, motion to approve the minutes. And again, the motion carries 97% approving and 3% abstaining. So we will next go into the treasurer's report with Keith Bruxford. And I'd be remiss, Keith has been doing this for some time. Extremely competent, extremely patient. He spent, if he could teach me the things that I had to know to be a district governor, he could teach anyone. But the amount of effort that he puts into this year after year needs to be, he has to be commended for his service. Keith, if you would go through our financial report, our budget.
Good morning, everyone. This year, as we have all known, has been very different as to the past years. I'm first going to touch a little bit on the final results from the year that ended June 30 of 2020. As you can see, it's the second column, the actuals versus the budgets, and we'll touch on the major discrepancies. Administrative Council at the end of last year elected to recognize that all dues paid in the second half of the year would be credited to dues for 2021, which thus resulted in the budget being 69,000, the actual being 36,000. The Pets fee was the same, was actually held. So there were some credits and some things issued. So that didn't change. We did invest in some CDs last year. And at that time, they were paying an actual interest rate. The CDs today are paying some money, but I don't know that I'd call it an interest rate. But we did earn $1,035. The next section, the club conference assessment, since we did not hold an actual district conference, it was virtual last year. We did the same thing. We elected to move all of the charges to $6 per member and move them to this year and not charge the clubs anything for the district conference for last year. And thus there were no other expenses. So we had no activity whatsoever in that column. Chris, if you go to the second page, we'll continue on the actual. The expenses, as you can see, some of them continue to happen. Obviously, clerical doesn't change, office supplies, bank charges. Bank charges continue to grow each year as more and more clubs pay with credit cards. Those fees are impacted. The mileage for last year, while we went virtual late in the year, wasn't too far off budget, but we still ended up with only 44,000 of expenses versus 52,000 expenses there. The next section, due to everything being shut down, there was no friendship exchange. We didn't have any new clubs opening for Rotary. Youth exchange, we didn't spend as much because everything shut down. And then the foundation events was the actual cost to hold the virtual event, or not the virtual, the actual events that were held at 3 sites last year. Those were the actual expenses for that. Still, it was a reduction in our budget by about 2,600 and some change. Next page, Chris. And then this is where the big changes started coming in. The multi-district pets, at the end of the day, almost everything that we had spent got reimbursed except for the club charges. Almost everything else got reimbursed. So instead of a $7,800, we only had $429 spent. So there was a big savings in that one. And then the last section, the RI convention, while the convention was held in a virtual format, the district determined that we would still accrue and provide the funds as future available to the district governor and the district governor-elect. Since they were not able to attend a conference last year, they would still be able to attend a conference in the future. And so those items were still budgeted. So that section didn't change too much. At the bottom, we do show a negative net revenue for last year. While this is a P&L statement, we had a very positive cash flow because we had collected those dues that we rolled to this year. We had collected the district conference fees, which were rolled to this year. And the accrual for the convention shows an expense. So we did have a positive cash flow of approximately $35,000 yet last year. And so we end up with a deficit. So that's the report for the final report for the year ending June 30. If we go back to the top, we will start looking at the budgets for this year.
Keith,
yes.
do we have any questions in regard to last year before we move to that? You could put them in chat, probably be best because it's hard to catch somebody's hand up, but or you could unmute yourself and ask Keith a question in regard to the last year financials.
Keith, you said that there were no expenses for virtual meetings. That seems a little odd. Don't we have to pay for the Zoom privileges and other things?
Well, those fall into the office expense category. So the big items were held virtually, and those did not have any direct related expenses to us. While we have Zoom charges and so forth, those are in the office expense category. And so we were still under budget there. But yeah, I really meant there the big items.
Chris or John, are you seeing any? I can't see chat, so are you seeing any other questions for Keith in last year's numbers?
No, not in chat.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, Keith, if you want to go ahead and proceed then.
So I'm going to kind of cover this year's budget actual and next year's budget as we go down the line. As you can see, this year we had budgeted for 2,292 members. Based on current membership, we are only budgeting for 2,150 members for the budget for 21-22. When you drop down to club dues, you can see that budget was 68,000 for last year. It's 64,500 for this year. And we're only showing a current of 50,000. And there again, we elected, due to being a virtual year, that we will not incur as many expenses. So as I indicated earlier, we rolled approximately $30,000 into this year for dues, but then we also elected to only bill the dues for the second half of the year at 50%. So clubs really for the year are paying 1/4 of the dues that they paid in previous years. And we feel that number one, helped the clubs. It's also that we were not incurring the expenses due to most things being virtual. And as you can see, the pets fee, which normally would be around $14,250 per club, this year, because of virtual, each club was only billed $50, and the district absorbed any additional costs that we may have incurred above the $50. But so there was only a $2,800, so that will generate obviously almost a $12,000 surplus in this year. The RI Rotary International reimbursement, these are the actual numbers that were given by them. You can see that we had a decrease from what they had budgeted because they did have a cut to the allocation, and then the amount for next year is just slightly less than that. They are trying to cut those funds further, and we're actively trying to make sure that we can justify those expenses in different ways where normally mileage and other things would be covered under that. We are trying to use other categories to maintain those funds. And then once again, the interest income is about $1,000, which from CDs that came matured last fall. Just in reference for the CDs, the ones that matured were 2.55% and 2.75%. The new ones are 0.85% and 0.35%. And the one that matured 2 weeks ago, the best you can get is 0.25% for 1 year. So obviously we will not have as much interest income, but that's just a supplement to it. So at the end of the day, our total budget for last year was 106,452. We're only going to have revenues probably in the 70,000 range this year. And our budget for next year is 106,100. But it does anticipate that we will use some of the surplus from prior years of $11,050 to make to actually pull some of the funds in the excesses from prior years because we have elected to do some things to keep the club costs down at this time. And then district conference is always a break-even assumption, and so there's no directly impact to that. Okay, we can drop another page there, Chris. I think we lost the number. Oh, no, we didn't. Okay. So the next section, if you look, the clerical budget for the current year is $52,454. We actually found a way to save $4 for next year's budget. with some modifications to the numbers above. As you can see, the clerical, there's a slight change for next year. There's a slight change in office supplies and printing because we are anticipating doing a couple things with Zoom and others to beef up the capabilities of our district. Bank charges have not changed. They are only 457 this year because we said we only billed a third or fourth of what we would normally bill this year. So this reflects a lower number for this year. The meals number, or not the meals, the big item in these two numbers down here is that mileage expense is budgeted at 12,945. And as you can see, we're at zero, and hotels are at zero because RI mandated that there is no, that district governors and district governor elects are not allowed to travel and receive any reimbursement for travel this year. Due to the RI requirements. So this is where we anticipate that at the end of the year, we're probably going to only spend about 32 to 35,000. And this is where we generate part of the surplus that we didn't need the dues to be billed. The next section is really the same type of thing. These are all things that we would normally be doing, but due to the pandemic this year, we've had a $750 expense when we had the virtual foundation dinner for a few expenses and for that. So here again, there's a significant savings, and next year's budget is exactly the same as the current year budget. The next section. And here again, this year, the actual payment to GL Pets was $8,400. And we had budgeted 14,000, and the multi-district pets, since it was all virtual, we had a little bit of expense incurred because of that. But again, the budget was 6,950 and we had 820. So here again, there's significant savings. Now these are only year-to-date numbers. There will be a few changes, and then the last section, we anticipate that we will budget the 9,500 again for RI convention to be carried forward so that John and Jane can attend future conventions since they're not able to this year. And so at the current time, we have a $49,000 surplus. We anticipate that we will still end the year with a surplus of probably $20,000. And that's part of the reason to use part of the reserve surplus for next year. If you can see, we saved the $4 up in the category of expenses, and there's that $4 that we saved in our budget for next year is a $4 decrease from the current year. So we're proposing a budget of almost identical to the budget that we had for 2021 for the year 21-22. So if there are questions, we'll take that.
Dan Oldenkamp, Monticello. I have a question.
Yes.
You have two entries in there for youth exchange. It was my understanding that we were not going to have youth exchange for another year.
Well, youth exchange, our cost for youth exchange is strictly the background security checks. We pay for all those. That's the only cost that we have for youth exchange. So that is.
Would we still have that cost if we're not having any background checks done?
Well, any event that they would hold in the year from July 1 of 21 to June 30 of 22.
Okay.
That's what we don't know that. I mean, they typically run about $100 a month. So if it starts up, yes, we might not have any for a little while, but that's the only thing we pay for is the actual background checks that are done by the district group that maintains the youth exchange.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
question. You're anticipating that Rotary will go back to normal in 21, in 2021, excuse me, in the 21-22 year, correct?
Well, we're assuming that most expenses will be normal in 2021-22. We talked about it. Well, if you look at the majority of our expenses, the big expenses all actually happen after January 1. District conference, RI convention, pets, all those things that are the big dollars that we save this year happen after January 1 of next year.
Okay.
So the other expenses that we have for district secretary, for office supplies, for those things,
They stay the same.
are going to stay the same. Travel expenses, it's hard to say, when Jane can start visiting clubs. We talked about it. I mean, normally the clubs are all visited in the fall, but if the RI comes along and says you can start doing them again as of September 1, for instance, the intent is that she would still have that mileage. It's just deferred to a later time frame than it normally would be incurred.
Makes sense. Okay, thank you.
I know there was a question about in chat in regard to the assumption on members. Jane, would you want to, I saw you respond, would you like to expound on that, please?
Certainly. Well, all of those numbers up at the top were actually budgeted numbers. So they were actually, they weren't actual numbers based on what we had at that particular time. So from the 1920 to the 2021 budget, we had lost about 104 members, even though that wasn't reflected in those numbers. And then in membership this year, as John put in there, I think right now we're down approximately 50. We budgeted very conservatively because we always in June, there's several clubs that take off membership so that they don't have to pay for them. So we wanted to budget conservatively at the beginning of the year so that hopefully we're going to have a big focus on membership as we do every year, but especially coming off of a pandemic, it's going to be very important. And I think we'll grow those numbers, but we wanted to be conservative with our budget to make sure that we could cover the expenses we needed.
Thank you, Jane. And for those of you may not be aware, Jane is our district governor-elect. I should have introduced her as such. I'll give you an example. When I was membership chair for the district, we're coasting along. We're like 60 members to the good on June 30th. And when the clubs purge their records so they don't have to pay the dues on them, Rotary goes by what your records are July 1. In other words, after everybody turns in their number. And I think for my year, we landed up losing like 30 members. So there can be, you just don't know. It could be a 50 to 100 member reduction. And some clubs aren't meeting. So it may be a case they get back together. They kind of find out who's on their roster, who's not. It's just kind of a shot in the dark. And we hope that the budget's been set in a conservative manner. But we really won't know till we get to July 1.
Dan, Floyd's got a question.
Actually, I don't have a question, but it's a clarification on the travel issue. As we all know, that the board of directors took a position to suspend all travel, funded travel, until the end of June. On May 7th, the board will have a one-item agenda meeting where a discussion will be held on whether or not that will be extended. There is some talk that it may be very well extended until the end of August. So you might be able to just think in terms of that, Jane.
Thank you, Director Floyd. If anybody's on the front end of it, it would be Floyd. So it's a really, and Floyd's been actually in those meetings, but I think sometimes we think, well, everyone in the United States is getting vaccinated, but we have to remember we're an international service organization, and all of that needs to be taken into account. And Rotary in their past has been more of a what are we doing as a whole, not in part. So, but we'll leave that to the directors and Director Floyd when they meet on May the 7th. But hopefully that will start to open up yet in this early part of the next Rotary year. We just don't know. Do we have other
I have a question about that. If Jane decides she does want to travel, is she excluded from traveling, or is she excluded from being reimbursed? And then I have a second part of that.
Well, no one is excluded from travel. Okay, but the concern is, just as Dan mentioned, we're an international organization, and there have been some deaths in other parts of the world where Rotarians were traveling and they got the COVID and they ended up dying because of that. So rather than be regional, think of it regionally, we have to think as a board internationally.
Okay.
Now, there are districts and clubs who are meeting in person in our two zones, in zone 30 and 31. But it's at their own risk. For example, our club wanted to begin meeting this coming week with social distancing and so on, but we hit a snag because the hotel wasn't ready to meet for us to meet there. So there are clubs. As a matter of fact, there's a couple of 100th anniversaries that are going to occur in a couple of weeks that are meeting virtually for their celebration, but there will be no Rotary representative who will be going to any of those meetings. So I hope I answered your question, Bill.
Floyd,
So
there was
the second
also a
part of the-
question of how much is that? Could you tell us how membership's been affected internationally overall?
Well, I can't give you exact numbers. Like, what I can tell you though is that internationally we're up about 12,000 members over the previous July. But we're also down about 200,000 over the previous June. So even though, as you said, they purged, the districts and clubs have purged, but then we had new members that have come in. So we're still down. And I think there's an anticipation that when this pandemic is over, we'll be down in membership. However, historically, after H1N1 and the World War I, World War II, and so on, what Rotary International found was that there was a real need for fellowship, and I think a lot of people joined Rotary for that very reason. So it could be that maybe we'll be down, but then we'll pick up again. So that's what the thinking is, historically anyway.
Bill, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have another question?
Yes, I had a question for, as it pertains to Jane. If our particular district opens up, we're vaccinated, we're doing things like our club is meeting, and she wants to travel, does the district have an option of allowing her to submit her expenses at a time after it is allowable? In other words, could we defer her expenses if she wants to travel during this interim period?
I would say that at this point, we would reimburse expenses that she incurs. The district has just elected, or district governors and district governor-elect Jane have opted to follow the RI directive at this point, but we have not prohibited that we would reimburse. It's just we can't use those reimbursements toward the funds that RI provide for us. So they provide 14,000, of which mileage is usually a big part. We can't submit any mileage, hotels, or any expenses that normally would get covered in that category for this year. But that's been a district decision for this year. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't reimburse. We just haven't had the occasion at this point.
And I would add to that, Bill, that I'll give you a perfect example. In my year as governor, I didn't turn in any hotel stays, and they told me it didn't matter because you'd be making it up in mileage. This is according to Rotary International. And so they cut what they were going to send to the district in my year by 10%, the maximum. So we're very sensitive to trying, Keith watches that closely. Whatever expenses are allowed, we try to satisfy what we receive from the Rotary International first in any given situation, so that they don't look at it and say, well, you didn't use all the money, so let's just cut you down. So we've become very sensitive to that. But when they're not allowing, yeah, what RI gives us doesn't cover, near what we want. They want us to continue to do more, but it's more at the district expense. So from that perspective, I would think if Jane's delayed with her club visits, but still makes club visits, if RI allows it, then we'd be trying to shove the mileage towards the RI allocation at that point.
RI has changed their funding model about 3 years ago, and we've been part of that test model. And so we actually receive their funds very early in July each each year, where under the old funding model, you got, I believe it was 60% or 70% in July, and you had to submit all the documents at the end of the year to get your other 30%. But part of their funding model actually asks you what you've spent for that district governor, direct expenses for district governor nominee, district governor elect, and district governor. And while they're reimbursing $14,000, that typically runs our district about $35,000 to $40,000 over that 3-year period. And these are generally items that they mandate that you have to attend for district zone meetings and training meetings and things. So while they reimburse about $14,000 while the person is governor, we've had to spend $35,000 to satisfy their requirements over a 3-year period. So it is a significant, and we want to try and make sure we do everything possible to keep that reimbursement, because it does help our district while we still have other mandates.
Keith and Dan, this is Floyd again. I wanted to mention that even though the allocation comes and you're not allowed to submit for travel expenses, other expenses that are related to running the organization or our district are allowable. And that would include Zoom fees and virtual meetings and any video things that you may want to do, brochures, anything that has anything to do with running the district, with the exception of travel.
Thank you, Floyd, for that clarification. I also saw a question in regard to how are we doing with, as Keith said at the Ad Council when we discussed this during a pandemic. Keith, I'm sure you're going to be telling us our reserves here soon. But we felt we had to reserve. Usually you're trying to keep in your reserve 1 year of operating expenses. And we had sufficient surplus to be able to provide relief back to the clubs. They weren't even meeting, everyone in a pandemic. So that was our best effort. But Keith, I saw Christina had asked, how are we doing as far as, maybe Chris and you could respond to that. How are we doing as far as clubs paying their club dues?
That is one thing I did not look at today. As of March, we had 4,000 in outstanding dues. I did not look at it for today. That was as of March 1. So obviously we're a little ways past that, but we had $4,000 outstanding at that time. I would assume it's less. We've had a couple of issues come up with some clubs regarding some past due things, and we've worked through those. As a district, and I'm just going to give you a couple historical numbers, and every district governor does things differently. And so some years things have happened that have generated reserves. Most years we have not had deficits. And so the reserve has continued to grow. So there was a conscious effort to spend down some of the reserves over the last couple of years. At the end of June of 2018, the reserve had grown to 166,000 because it was a 35,000 surplus that year. So we started working it down, and in June 30 of 19, the reserve was 149,000 and change, and the reserve was down to $132,000 and change at the end of 20. As of March 28, which all the actuals are based on, since we have to have a 30-day notice and admin has to do this, all the numbers with the current surplus here of $49,000, that obviously raises our surplus back up to 180, which is well more. And that's part of why we reserved we reduced the dues, did not charge for the district conference. And like I said earlier, the clubs are really paying about 1/4 this year of what they would normally pay. And we will review it again before we get to the year end. We expect, like I said earlier, I expect this reserve surplus by the time we're done to be probably in the maybe $14,000, $15,000 range, but that's just speculation on my part. But we are trying to spend the reserve and get it back to closer to that 1 year number. So.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. And I saw where Chris had put out in chat for everyone that he'd have to check to verify, but estimates there's 3 clubs with outstanding dues. So when you're in a pandemic and you still have some clubs that haven't met or they're meeting virtually, we've been at the ad council level as we review all of this. We've been very pleased with the diligence of our clubs and the membership. And as Keith said, we had some past things we just decided to get cleaned up. Miscommunications, those type of things, and it's just they're not significant amounts in it. So we think moving forward that fiduciary wise we're in good stead. Do we have other questions in regard to anything that Keith has presented? Now's the time. You represent the clubs. Rotarians are number one, and clubs are right there. It's not top down. It's Rotarian up. So a Rotarian down. So does anybody have a question for Keith at this time? And if you want to unmute, if you're not comfortable with the chat, please feel free to do that also.
This is Bill Burton from Elkhart. Do we have a feel for how many clubs are not yet meeting at all?
Governor John, would you answer that?
We continue to have about 5 clubs, which you're going to hear later today, that continue to struggle. And it's, I'm going to bluntly say that this year they have turned our situation into an excuse and not a reason. But they have not been active, truthfully, in the past maybe 5 years. You can be assured that we are trying to communicate with these clubs. We are trying to encourage them to meet. And I was bluntly told last week by a club that they have not met since a year ago, March, and they will not meet until July 1st. And I encouraged virtual meetings. Some clubs have met virtually from day one, very, very successfully. I believe that clubs need to include a virtual component in their meetings from now on, simply because it allows people who are on vacation, speakers from remote locations. But we are, I cannot give you an exact number. I did a poll around the first of the year, and I guess I've been busy trying to help collect club dues and RI dues that haven't been paid, and I've not really focused on rather an exact number of clubs not meeting. But I know another example is a club told me, well, we were meeting, we were paying $125 for food at this restaurant, and there were 4 of us showing up. Well, even Keith would recognize that's probably not good business.
Yeah.
So they stopped meeting. We have had contact with that club. We have an assistant governor working with them. We also have another club that's in a similar situation. And again, the assistant governor and membership chair are working diligently to get or keep those clubs active.
And thank you for the answer. And that question probably wasn't really a treasurer focused question even. So I got veered off, but thanks for the answer on that.
Yeah, I think, there's a high correlation between clubs that are involved in meetings like today, our district conferences, membership seminars, foundation seminars, all of that. I've been at the district level now for 19 years. And when you want to look for vibrant clubs, they're clubs that aren't just operating within their own community. They're reaching out internationally. They're networking with other clubs in the district for best practices. And of the clubs that have struggled, really even gaining access in there for a meaningful conversation is difficult. So like I say, the governors prior to me and my year and since that time, we're very sensitive to it. But it's the old saying, sometimes you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So I had a question, John, and I don't want to get too far off the budget thing, but they did want to know how many are holding live meetings. Are you aware of that?
Not officially, but I can generate an email to the club presidents and ask them. Unfortunately, response to emails are often limited. So you have to fill in the blanks often. So I saw that comment from Roger. I know he'll get back. I will create another email and get some information soon.
Yeah, I sense that there's that clubs are doing it, maybe starting to see some hybrid. I know my club is meeting in person. And I think some clubs are starting to get back to that, but I wouldn't have a sense of it any more than anyone else would. But specific to the financial report and the budget, and these questions are all of value. I mean, that's why we're having this business meeting. We want the clubs to be informed. But specific to the financials and the budget, are there any other questions before I ask for a motion? Any other discussion? If not, I'd ask for a motion to approve the
I'd
budget.
make a motion to approve.
I second. This is Bill from Elkhart.
I think we had both Bills, didn't we? Bill Dybel from
Yes.
Monticello has made the motion, and Bill Burton from Elkhart Rotary has made the second. And so, Chris, if you would give the delegates, there you go, chance to vote in regard to approving the proposed budget. We have 9. Well, that's pretty interesting. As a banker, I'd have 98 and 3 equals 101, but I think we have enough to say we've approved the proposed budget with at least 97%, if not 98%, approving yes.
Hey, Dan.
But Dan, being a banker and being an accountant, spreadsheets work funny. You put a 1.4 in one column and a 1.4 in another column, and you get 1 and 1 equals 3. Since it picks up all those fractions. So this division here, kind of gives you that extra percentage, so that's how you make money when you're a banker,
Oh, I understand the process. I understand the process, Keith. And what makes it worse is I'm a lender. So, we're always in the gray. We're always in the gray area.
Can we change the subject, please?
Sure. We can do that.
I'm a banker as well, so.
Hey, Dan. Dan.
Yeah. Well, if it's not a bank, we're just making it easy on the attorneys in the audience. Because if it's not taking a shot at one, it's taking a shot at the other. Keith, again, thank you so much for your service. Floyd, did you have a comment?
Yes, I do. I want to extend a huge thank you to Keith, because he's been doing this for several years, and oftentimes the stuff that he does goes unnoticed. But Keith, I want you to know that what you do is truly appreciated, and the district sees you as a true rock star. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Here, here.
Yeah, that was I think my first phone call, wasn't it, Keith? Will you stay on when I was going to be governor? So
Yeah, somebody asked me the other day how many years, and I haven't really paid attention. Judy was finishing up and Christine was starting. So I don't know exactly what years those were, but that's when I got started.
Well, you didn't have any gray in your beard, so I mean, that's the sign.
I was going to say the same thing. So there you go.
I wasn't allowed to have a beard at that time when I worked. So
I wonder whether you got the gray when you were governor, Dan.
Well, I put a lot of gray in a lot of people's head, and you know that, Floyd. That was even before I was governor. So with that, let's move on. Very pleased to move on to our foundation report by our district foundation chair, Judy Walker, past district governor. Also the recipient last night of the Rich Engel Lifetime Achievement Award, has just done, particularly in a pandemic. And for those of that have ever worked on Matching Point campaign, she did it on steroids, where we've, in John's year, we've set a record. I believe it's, I'll let Judy give that number, but the amount of paperwork and time, and there she is. Anytime on a Zoom meeting, you see stacks of paper, I usually figure those are the matching points program. So outstanding service, and Judy will let you report on the foundation.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And although we're ongoing economic challenges from COVID-19, and they've affected some aspects of Rotary Foundation, our district has remained strong in its contributions to the Rotary Foundation. The numbers I'm reporting right now in this report are year-to-date from July 1, 2020. And the good thing is we have until midnight, June 30th, June 2021 to improve them. And we do plan to work aggressively to do that as well. Our annual fund giving so far is $227,176. Polio Plus 45,520. Other funds 230,022, and the endowment fund is 104,314, for a total Rotary Foundation giving thus far of $579,032. Our per capita for the annual fund giving is $102.61. And again, there were 6 non-giving clubs.
Judy?
Yes.
Would you maybe explain what other funds are?
Well, as I understand it, it's like bequest society and things like that. Please continue, or I'm not telling.
Other funds, it can't be, but usually what other funds are significant amounts that are given to, say, other programs, such as a specific global grant. So where you've had, so a lot of people don't understand it when we say other funds.
Sure.
For example, out of the Fort Wayne Rotary Club, that they have been doing some significant grants through there. And once you designate a specific global grant, then that's counted as other funds. So just as an explanation, if someone was wanting to know. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's perfectly, and I expect that and appreciate it. On Thursday, November 12th, 2020, the district had a virtual gala complete with an MC and entertainment, which was the United Kingdom's #1 jive and swing band. And the lively music was artistically woven between presentations of how and where the foundation contributions had been used. Being able to donate online at the gala was an added convenience. And together with the Matching Points campaign, $93,043 was raised for the annual fund. We gained 106 new Paul Harris Fellows, and 158 Paul Harris Fellows had raised their level. And we also added a new benefactor from those. The COVID-19 crisis took a toll on our district grant program this Rotary year. Youth exchange and summer scholars were canceled due to safety and travel restrictions. We also had 5 clubs outright cancel projects that had been awarded grant funds. Projects that remained doable in many cases were significantly delayed. So as things stand right now, grants to clubs for projects that will be completed will total $50,360. We also received a disaster grant of $25,000 from Rotary International to help our communities that are having hardships due to COVID-19. And that amount was distributed among several Rotary clubs in our district. In 2021, the district committed approximately $55,000 in grant funds to support global grants sponsored by 6540 clubs. A majority of those were in India, but also in Uganda and Guatemala. We provided of our designated funds, $27,900 to the Polio Plus program, which is included in the total I mentioned earlier. We had to cancel our global grant management seminar for a second year in a row. This compelled clubs to use the Rotary International Training Seminar in the Rotary Learning Center in order to qualify for participation and global grants. We are hoping to return to an in-person seminar in the spring of 2022. Finally, we offer district grants seminars in January, and we anticipate doing that again in January of 2022. That concludes my report.
Judy, there was a question from Becky Fletcher up at South Bend Rotary. How do the Paul Harris Fellow numbers compare to previous years? Did we lose any momentum with the pandemic?
No, actually, they're up. And so I think that's a good sign. As people have become, and this sounds disconnected, but has become aware of the value of Paul Harris Fellow points from their contributions and matching points and so on, they're now becoming inquisitive and competitive in getting those happening in their clubs. I think we had one club, I'm not sure of, John will talk about this later, that or 100%, well, that would be Fort Wayne for sure, Paul Harris Fellows, but they're up. I can't give you the numbers, but I know they're up quite a bit.
Governor John, are you going to be mentioning how our district is represented at the zone level, or would you want me to do that now?
Why don't you go ahead and do that, Dan? You've got the numbers in front of you, and they change every day, so you can give us an update.
Yeah, I'm, for those of you not aware, I'm what's called a regional Rotary Foundation coordinator for our zone, of which District 6540, we're one of 14 districts at the zone. And it has been a struggle. We've actually are gaining on it, but we're down about 7.3% in our zone in giving, which we'll keep working towards getting back to even, but that's pretty outstanding, we think, in a pandemic. Our district ranks in the top third in annual fund giving, that every Rotarian every year. We rank second in per capita giving out of the 14 districts, and in total giving year to date, we are number one. So we have a strong tradition, 6540, of leading by example. And under John's leadership in extremely challenging times, we are our district is a rock star, and we thank John and his foundation team led by Judy for all of their efforts. Are there other questions for Judy? Okay, if not, then we're going to move on. We'll be hearing for the State of the Union, so to speak, from our Governor John. I think we all recognize it's not a job in this kind of a pandemic that you would want, but you know, Providence picked John, and he was the right man for the job. To me, a true sign of leadership is when you're feeling down and discouraged, excuse me, no one else knows it. And you motivate people and you lead people and you get them to help pull the wagon. And John has just done an outstanding job of doing that this year. So with that, John, we would ask for you to give your report of the district to the clubs represented.
Thank you, Dan. Yes, this is my report for the state of the district. I could start with what might have been, but that's not from this governor. This will be more about what has been. First of all, thank you to all of you and your leadership this year, both at the club and district level. This has not been what we signed up for, I don't believe. I know it wasn't in my case. And after our eviction from Pets, halfway through on Friday, March the 13th, 2020, I threw out my well-laid plans and began on a journey I will never forget. The district was able to eliminate club dues until January 1st. Many of the leadership team attended our virtual team tactical seminar on April 18th. They shared their goals and their plans for their committees with the hope of being in person soon with all events on schedule. July 1 brought the reality of a virtual year as governor. The RI directive said no travel or district in-person meetings. We distributed checks, the first governor to send checks back to club who got reimbursed from Great Lakes Pets for not being able to complete their session. I was notified again about January 1 that there would be no travel or district meetings until after January 1. So I began attending over 420 virtual club meetings. Some club virtual meetings have continued to this day. Most clubs have continued hybrid meetings with great programs from around the world. This would not have been possible in the in-person only format. And at least one club, as I mentioned earlier, has not met all year. We still have 5 clubs that continue to avoid the changes successful clubs have adopted. As Judy said, over $51,000 in district grants were awarded. And we did hold a virtual club officer training seminar on July 20th. August 11th was an AG training update. We met with John Hennis. The 2020 Zone Summit and Leadership Institute was virtual for DGE, DGN training in September and October. November brought our first attempt at a virtual foundation gala, which Judy led. We also kicked off the points match and I believe raised $12,000 in online giving the night of the gala. January came with additional rules and restrictions for district leaders, and governor travel was banned until July 1. Foundation Committee held a virtual grant training on January 12th and 13th. International Assembly was moved to Orlando from San Diego, but unfortunately for Jane, it was virtual. Jane and Ed led Pre-Pets, was held in 2 virtual sessions in mid-February. And then President-elects, AGs, and others participated in virtual Mega Pets in March. Several district leaders were facilitators. Thanks to all that worked to pull it off. Then we were informed that the Taipei International Convention will be virtual. We also made the decision that the district conference, technically by RI mandate, we could hold no in-person meetings. We got to plan our second virtual conference because Al Brothers, past district governor, got to experience the first one. Other major things that have been underway, and you will begin to see the results of those. Thanks to Jane's leadership and Elizabeth Yusevich, director, who will follow Floyd in zones 30-31. We began the creation of a new strategic plan for the future of our district. A key district group of leaders were chosen, almost 40 surveys completed, data analyzed, and planning sessions were held. The first year, quote, of the plan is complete. It's not implemented, but it's complete. And there will be further developed in the coming weeks and should be ready for rollout July 1, 2021. Thanks to DGE Jane for her leadership in this process. Another opportunity we were given this year is to create a district youth crisis plan. That began in December of 2020 and continues to be developed. Committee members include youth leadership, RILA, Youth Friendship Exchange, World Affairs, and Interact. This plan will create training and structures of how those of us working with youth can plan for and react to situations that may affect our interaction with youth. And those youth are under the age of 18. And I want to continue to remind clubs to make sure that you do background checks on those people in your clubs that transport or work with youth alone. It's critical. This plan we are creating will be comprehensive. We'll deal with natural disasters, inappropriate behavior, and other threats to our youth and members. I think Judy covered most of the foundation, but I will just review that quickly. Total annual fund today has reached $102.58 per person. We have $247,500.42 in total annual giving, with the total giving at $578,974. It's not about the money, it's about what the money can do. I think we've generated 100 new Paul Harris Fellows and 60 new donors to the foundation. New 100% Paul Harris clubs include Concord at the end of last year, Logansport, and Fort Wayne. There is potential we will have more 100% Paul Harris clubs by July 1. Membership. District club membership had decreased by 69 members from July 1, 2020. Today, we are down 52 members. Unfortunately, the district lost 100 members last year, and however, we are growing new satellite clubs and Rotaract clubs. Rotaract clubs include Purdue University Northwest, the Lake County Club based near Cherville, and a Fort Wayne satellite club includes Huntertown with the parent club Anthony Wayne. Logansport is working on a club based on their Guatemalan community. And there's work also underway for a cause-based veterans club and a Miami Nation-based cause club. Those will have significant numbers of e-members, which are new to most of our clubs in district. In closing, I just want to say that you have to run fast to stay in place. I believe, thanks to the help from the clubs, the district leaders, the presidents, we have done that. Thank you all for the opportunity to lead the district with your help. I will caution you that the race is not over yet, and I have never seen a runner or a race car driver start coasting on the last turn. If they do, they normally lose. So I would say, pedal to metal, let's take the checkered flag. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And I think Jeff Pete in the chat section from Fort Wayne says it all. He says, excellent lemonade from those lemons, John. No one could have done better.
Thank you, Pete.
So we thank you for your service. Next, we'll have our nominating committee. This is led by past District Governor Steve Sorensen. And we will have votes that will come up in particular for 3 different categories. And Steve, with that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure and an honor to be able to work on this committee. In my opinion, strictly my opinion, it's probably the most important committee in our district. The reason why I say that, we look for the future leaders of our district, those who will lead us in the right direction. And we think we've come up with another one who will lead us in that direction. I want to thank those who served on the committee this year for doing an outstanding job. They represent all 3 areas of our district, going from west to east. Area 1 being Missy Hotelling from Boswell. Area 2 was John Shellcrossley from Monticello. And Area 3 was Michael Howell from Anthony Wayne. Those are the 3 area representatives. Then we also have 3 district governors, past district governors, who served on that committee. One being Judy Walker from the Hammond Club. Another was Mike Crable from the Elkhart Club, and myself from the Fowler Club. My hat's off to all. We received our applications and we did a diligent search to find the person that we felt we could recommend to be approved by this gathering of great Rotarians. We came up with that individual. They will be a perfect leader coming in to follow those we have in place who are going to be perfect leaders. We currently have John Frischie, you know, as our district governor from Kentland. Jane Roush from the Albion Club as our governor-elect. As our governor nominee, we have Tim Gibson from the Fort Wayne Club. And as our governor nominee designate, we have Ed Van Wyk from the DeMont Club. The person we're going to add to that list, or we hope you will approve today with your vote, is Holly Seabury from the Fort Wayne Club. Holly is going to fall right in line with the type of leaders that we've selected in the past. She will be an excellent, excellent leader. And she has some great ideas leading into her year as governor, which will be 2024, 2025. Seems like a long way off, but time flies when you're having fun.
Steve, we have a motion and a support already.
Well, now that's really great. You love that when that already comes in ahead of time.
Lisa Waterman, past district governor Lisa Waterman, has made a motion to approve Holly, and
Okay.
Becky Fletcher from South Bend Rotary has seconded that.
Very good. So now we need Chris's line up there so that we can vote. And I would ask that Holly be prepared to give us a few remarks if she would, when this is finished.
And yes, we have pretty much unanimous that motion to accept Holly as our district governor be designate for 2024, 2025. Congratulations, Holly. And Holly, if you would give us, would you like to make a few comments? And I would add that Holly was the recipient of the Cable Award last night, if you were not in attendance, for the foundation work she's done. Holly?
Thank you. I'm joined by my husband, Mark. A lot of you know Mark from Rotary Events, who is obviously, you know, a huge support and makes it possible for me to do the work I do with Rotary. I've always been proud to be a Rotarian, coming up on 12 years now. I'm extremely proud and honored and humbled to be asked to join the district governor lineup. I think many of you know my passion for international work, and you'll see that over the next few years. My goal is to have everybody involved in international projects to the best that we can. So thank you so much. Thank you for your confidence and your support, and I look forward to serving you.
Well, we're excited to have you. And Mark, always good to see you. Look forward to when we can share an adult beverage again. But you know, Holly, just to give you an example of the type of Rotarian is, I called Holly and I said, I'd like to form a resource person in Zone 30 to help out with global grants. And you're my first choice. And she said, anything global grants, Dan, I'm always in. So she'll also be representing us at the Zone 30 level. But just a quick story. I was asking Holly to put her name in to be governor, and she said, "Don't you have to be president first, Dan?" So but I'm just one of many that have been encouraging her to do that. As Steve says, you try to continue to build leadership going into the future. So with that, congratulations, Holly and Steve. I will turn it back to you for your next nomination.
Thank you, Dan. I suppose I should have asked if there were any other nominations from the floor, and I failed to do so, but I don't think there would be when you were getting so many motions and seconds right off the bat for Holly. That just kind of explains the type of person that we have. So congratulations, Holly. The next thing we have on our list is the search for a vice governor. And let me explain a little bit about, some of you may not know what a vice governor does or what their responsibility is. A vice governor is someone who will fill in for this coming year's governor. In other words, they will be there for Jane if she needs anything as our current governor-elect when she becomes district governor. We have a policy within not only RI, but our district 6540 has set up a policy that will look for a past district governor in the last 5 years, first, in the last 5 years, that has served to be the vice governor for the next governor. If there is no one available or they cannot find someone willing to take that responsibility, then they would go back to 5 years before that. So it would be the last 10 years that they would look for a vice governor. Well, we're very fortunate in our district. And with Jane's approval, because we always want this to go by the governor-elect or governor-to-be, their recommendation also as well, we have selected John Frischie. He thought he was going to get off the hook just that quick as being district governor, and he was out and done and wrapped up. Well, guess what? He gets to serve as vice governor to fill in for Jane should she become incapacitated in one way or another, be it by injury, be it by health, worst case scenarios. We don't want anything to happen to our governor. And one that's on this call with us today, who's moderating this meeting, knows that there is one past district governor that prayed for him and his health every morning and every night. And I know for a fact that John Frischie will be doing the same thing for Jane.
Well, I was doing it for John, Steve, during this year and continue to. I told him he can count on that till at least June 30th. We do have a motion from Jerry Cornegay for John to serve as vice governor, and Lee Morris from LaPorte for the Jerry's North Manchester, I believe.
Yes.
And Lee Morris from the LaPorte Rotary Club. So with that, if we could take the vote.
And I will ask this time if there are any other nominations from the floor, not because I want to, because it's the proper thing to do. And I don't hear any. I hope
I
nobody
move
else.
that the nominations be closed.
There you go.
There you go. Thank you very much. You just saved us right there.
Second.
First and
Boy,
second to close those, and if you would, vote. And Chris, if you'll let us know if John, who's sitting there with bated breath saying, "Oh my gosh, I hope this happens. I hope this happens." Oh, lucky you, John.
Oh.
You have been approved, selected by the clubs. So get your prayer rug ready for Jane, just as the rest of us have done. So with that, Steve, because we're starting to run out of time here, we have one final nomination.
I have one nomination left that we need to take care of. And I'll have to open this one up to the floor first. But this is for the zone voting delegate for a new director. Now, we should explain, Floyd is our current Rotary International director, not only from our zone, but for zones 30 and 31. and is recognized as a director with Rotary International. His term will be expiring come June 30. We need to find someone who will go in line after Elizabeth. Elizabeth Yusevich was selected a couple of years ago from Zone 31. So our turn will come around after Elizabeth has completed her term. And we have to have electors in place to find that individual and to elect that person to be in that position. So I'm going to turn this over to my counterpart on the nominating committee, Judy Walker.
And I make a nomination. I do know one of the requirements, Steve, is that you've attended or been involved in the zone for the last 5 years, and you've not only been involved, you've worked it. So I'm going to nominate Steve Sorensen for this position.
Do we have a second?
Second,
And who is that?
Mike Richardson.
Thank you, Mike, from Logansport. We have a motion and support. Chris, if you would put up our.
I have a question.
Oh, Floyd?
Yeah, and there's no reflection on Steve, but Steve, is there an issue about multiple years serving on this committee?
You can only do it twice.
Okay, so you'll be your second time coming up?
That is correct. That
Okay,
is
good.
correct.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we did discuss that. Okay, so the poll's up. Those for our representative on that nominating committee for the next RI director out of Zone 30. And yes, 100%. Steve, you get to go. Lucky you. We know
Lucky.
you'll represent us well. You've done it before, and it's always helpful to have people doing that have experience. And we thank you for your service and for your committee service. With that, do we have any announcements or any other comment before we move to adjournment? We're supposed to end at 10 o'clock. It says 10 o'clock. So with that, Bruce, I'll turn it back to you. And thanks so much for everyone's service and for serving as delegates and for attending this morning's business meeting.
Absolutely, Dan. Thank you very much. And indeed, we are getting ready to take a break, to move about the cabin, stretch, refill the coffee cup, check your bids on eBay, all that kind of thing. But first, it's time once more to spin and win for gift cards. So here's how this works. Remember, you have to be present to win. So if you're not here, please say something. Okay, let's spin first for a $10 gift card to Dairy Queen. And Chris will give that a little oomph. There we go. I love the sound effects. It's worth the price of admission. All righty. And our winner. Not there. Congratulations. Next, we're going to give the wheel a whirl for a $25 Target gift card. Always go to Target before you go home. Dr. Al.
Hey.
All right. Congratulations. Very good. And you're wondering, so no worries. We will spin yet again before we're all done with our Saturday session. So now this is important. So you don't miss what's coming up. Please be sure to log out of this business session so that you can click the Saturday button on the dashboard to get back into the general session that starts at 10:15. That's 10:15 Central, 11:15 Eastern, or 5:15 in Budapest, Hungary. So just to be clear, log out of this one, go to the dashboard, click Saturday, and we'll see you back on your screen around 10:15 Central, 11:15 Eastern, and that's it. Thank you all very, very much. See you shortly.
Thank you, Bruce. I think everyone can see why you were invited to be the MC. Yeah, radio voice, TV face. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.